Greetings, everybody, from the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. This is our July meeting, and it is wonderful to have so many of you here tonight. We've got a wonderful program planned out, and I think that we can jump in to the program, or well, to the first 15. Which will be presented by our own Frank Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, hey.
All right. Did you hit share screen yet?
I'm about to make you a co-host.
Okay.
The deed is done.
Okay. So we got share screen. Where is that share audio I got to find here? Mm-hmm. All right, so share screen, share sound. There we go.
Yay.
All right. Well, hide me. No, anyhow. All right. Tonight's first 15 is about the program Wormwood Forest. And it's probably the most juvenile of the juvenile shows that I could find for a first 15. But in many ways, I found the program to be a radio precursor to television's Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. The program was written and produced by Thomas Tishner. Mr. Tishner was born in Alabama, but raised by an aunt in Tennessee. While he was still in elementary school, Mr. Tishner began his lifelong association with puppetry. By 15, he was staging productions for the Children's Department of the Nashville Public Library, the main library. And with this production, he began an approximately 50-year relationship with the children of Nashville. During World War II, Mr. Tishner served in the Special Service Corps, where he showed movies and produced stage productions for soldiers in England, France, and Germany. After the war, he went to college, then joined the staff of the Children's Department of the Nashville Public Library, and he began a program of creating marionette productions to entertain children. And this is actually a group of children watching one of his productions. It's kind of cute. Now, in 1947, on Nashville station WSM, Tishner created the children's program, Wormwood Forest. In 1949, NBC picked up the live WSM broadcast and produced the show nationally for 16 weeks. The program continued on WSM over local stations until June of 1951. Now, in this photo, Mr. Tishner is third in from the left. The Wormwood Forest stories center around the Waldorf Hotel. The hotel proprietor is Dippy Dwarf, and that's the character played by Mr. Tishner. His assistant is Frankie Frog. The hotel is the primary location of the activities and conversations among the animal characters, along with occasional musical numbers. The show had a vast array of characters, including Barbara Q. Pig, Dumb Cluck the Woodchuck, Eager Beaver, Gerald Grasshopper, Grandpa Fox, Henrietta Hen, Muscles Muskrat, Oleander Salamander, Postman Possum, Sherlock Hound, Siamese Pretty Kitty, Grouse Mouse, Susie Skunk, Swami Salami, Swindler Q Fox, Tallulah Tobacco Worm, and Timothy Turtle. It's quite a crew. In the episode I'm going to play, you will only hear about half of these characters. So I'm going to play the show now.
Oh boy, another day in Wormwood Forest.
Hello, boys and girls. Again, it's time for another visit with our friends down in Wormwood Forest.
Hey, hey, don't run away. Listen a while, you'll want to stay. There's always lots of fun down in Wormwood Forest.
Hello, everybody. This is Dippy Dwarf. Today, Frankie Frog tries to get a special Valentine for his pretty kitty.
So don't leave your radio. Listen to our animal show. There's always lots of fun down in Wormwood Forest.
Valentines for sale. Valentines for sale. Got your fresh Valentines here.
Hey, good day, Gerald Grasshopper.
Hi, Dippy boy. Like to buy some Valentines?
Ooh, I might get one for my secretary, Tallulah Tobacco Worm.
These are rare imported Valentines, Short Dwarf. Went all the way to Cockleburr Corners for 'em.
You don't say.
Yep. Were made by a chicken named Clementine. Her slogan is, if you want a Valentine, come to Clementine. So it did.
But I'll take this Valentine here. How much, Gerald?
Well, that was usually 39 cents. But since you're such a good friend, Dippy,
Yes?
I'll let you have it for 45.
Oh, that's mighty nice of you, Grasshopper.
Fine. And if you see Frankie Frog in the hotel, send him out, Dippy.
You sure will, Grasshopper.
I'll wait out here.
Uh-oh, there's my secretary. I'd better hide this Valentine under my beard. There. Oh, hello, Tallulah Tobacco Worm.
Hello, Dippy. Did I see you hide something under your beard?
Hide under my beard? No, Tallulah.
But I'm sure.
Oh,
I
it was
saw-
only a letter. Only a letter.
You're acting so strangely, Dwarf.
Oh, it's only because I saw you, Tobacco Worm.
Well, I am wearing a new tobacco leaf. It has the new Latakia look. Like it?
Oh, very fetching. But I've got to find Frankie Frog. Have you seen him?
Yes, he just went upstairs to Kitty's room.
Well, I'll call him. Oh, Frankie Frog! Frankie! Frankie Frog!
Do you hear anything, Kitty baby?
Well, I hear Dippy calling you, Dream Frog.
Calling me Dream Frog? I didn't know he cared.
Silly frog. Sit here on the bench beside me.
Hey, but your whiskers tickle my ears.
Frogs haven't any ears.
Yeah, so they haven't. But your whiskers tickle just the same.
Well, don't be ridiculous. Sing to me, Frankie.
Don't mind if I do. Put your arms around me, kitty. Hold me tight. Huddle up and cuddle up with all your might. Oh, when you roll those eyes that I just idolize. When you look at me, my heart begins to float. And then it starts to rockin' like a motorboat. Oh, I never knew any cat like you. I really mean it. Cat like you.
Oh, Frankie. When you sing to me, I feel weak in my furry knees.
Oh, Frankie Frog! Come down here at once!
Yeah, there's Dippy calling me again.
We'll never have a moment of quiet until you see what he wants.
Well, I'll be right back, Kittygans. I'm coming, Dippy.
Well, hurry, Frog!
Okay, I'll slide in the banisters. Well, here I come. Go. Oh, my poor frog back.
Hey, what's the matter? Forget to lower your landing gear?
It's not funny. What if I'd sprained my sacrociliac or something?
Oh, never mind what might have been, Frog. Think of day after tomorrow.
Yeah, day after tomorrow? That's Monday.
Hey, that's not all. It's St. Valentine's Day.
You don't say.
Yes. Do you have a Valentine for Kitty?
Not yet.
Well, then this is your big opportunity, Frog. Hop right outside.
Why?
You'll see.
Valentines for sale. Hi, Frankie boy.
Hiya, Gerald Grasshopper. Oh, so this is what Dippy Dwarf meant. See, that's a fancy Valentine over there, Gerald.
That's a daddy frog. Daddy frog. That Valentine is sort of a combination.
Just what do you mean?
Well, it's one that I worked out in collaboration with Strauss the Mouse.
But he writes music.
Open up the Valentine, you'll see what I mean.
Okay. Hey, there's a blank music sheet in here. The lines, but no music.
Well, that's where Strauss comes in. You buy the Valentine, take it over to the Mouse's music studio. He'll compose a song for your sweetheart. For a small cost, of course.
Oh, of course.
Like it?
Yeah, I think it's nifty. How much is it?
$3.
Yeah, $3.
And cheap at the price, boy. Look at those feather-painted cupids.
Feather painted?
Yep. Clementine chicken painted them with her very own feathers. Note the quality of the paper lace. Fine.
I just have to have that Valentine.
Yours for $3.
Oh, gee, where can I get $3?
Well, I'll be around if you can scrape that amount together, Frog. Pardon me, I see a potential customer across the way. Fresh Valentine for you, Partridge.
Gee, $3. I can't borrow from Dippy. Already owe him 2 months' room rent. Hey, I bet Susie Skunk would let me have the money. I'll just hop over to her place, the old Badger residence. Well, here's the old Badger residence. Certainly hope Susie will lend me $3. That Valentine is a dream. Yeah, Kitty will sure love it.
If you're working your way through music school by selling tuning forks, I don't... Oh, hello, Frankie Frog.
Hiya, Susie Skunk.
Do come in. My doormat usually says welcome, but my last guest evidently had muddy feet.
Susie, I've come to you on a matter of gravest importance.
Well, can it wait just a moment, Frankie? One of my favorite radio programs is on now.
Sadie Snake Girl Reptile?
No, not now. I'm listening to Oleander Salamander, crawling poet and philosopher. Come on over by the radio, Frankie. Quiet now. The salamander's getting ready to be poetic.
Hello, friends and admirers. I'm now going to recite my newest 6-line quatrain. Poem. Oh, lovely Queen Anne's lace, growing wild most any place. Your delicate umbrellas white are to me shades of delight. Oh, petals fine, oh, blossoms divine, oh, stems. And now, until next time, this is your crawling poet and philosopher, Oleander Salamander, saying, remember, music, Ethelbert.
Oh, that was so inspiring. I'll turn it off. There.
Hey, Susie, I'll come right out and tell you what I need. $3.
$3? Gracious, what are you going to do, Frankie? Buy a platinum mustache cup?
Nope. I want to buy a Valentine for Kitty.
Why is it so expensive?
Yeah, you see, it's a very unusual Valentine. With a place inside for an original song by Strauss the Mouse.
Oh, how romantic.
Did you have $3 I could borrow?
Well, let me look in my purse, Frankie. Now, where did I put it?
Under the scatter rug, perhaps?
No, not this time. Oh, I remember. I put it in with the fruitcake.
Your purse in with a fruitcake?
Uh-huh. Someone said it looked out of date. Oh, here it is.
$3, please.
Now, let me see. My antique celluloid brooch, a jar of prickly pear pickles, some dental floss, a toothpick, a toothbrush.
No toothpaste?
Oh, yes, here's a tube. Oh, it's all squashed. Some salad forks, a raw potato, a bandsaw.
A bandsaw?
For very small bands. A reversible waffle. Well, I'm sorry, Frankie, but I don't see any money.
Gee, golligans. Oh, well, thanks just the same, Susie.
I'll show you to the door.
It was nice of you to offer your money, Sue. Even if you... Hey, there's a car coming up.
That's my old Chucky. Hello, Chucky.
Hello, sweetie Susie. Hi, Bob.
Hiya, Woodchuck. Where are you going?
Well, I'm taking my sweetie for a ride down by the brook.
Oh, boy. Then you can drop me off at the Mouse's music studio.
Fine. I'm always glad to drop off a frog anywhere.
I'm ready in my bonnet and fascinated, Clucky.
Oh, good. And then you can come, Susie Skunk, in my old pile of junk, and away we'll go. Away we'll go. Are you in, sweetie?
Yes, thank you, Chucky, dear.
Yeah, I'm in, too.
Well, please tell me where you want to stop, Frog. I certainly don't want to forget to put you out.
You can stop here, Woodchuck.
Very well. Whoa, little old car. Whoa, doggone it.
Yeah, I'll hop out. Thanks a lot, Chuck. Goodbye, Sue.
Bye, Frankie.
Yeah, the music studio of Strauss the Mouse. Yeah. Hey, come on, Mouse. Open up the door.
Greetings, Frog.
Hiya, Strauss the Mouse. Busy? Are you? Are you?
I'm never too busy to greet a musically inclined frog. Would you step into my studio, the music?
Yeah, thanks.
Likewise.
Strauss, I want an original song to put in a Valentine.
Frog, I got just the song. They ain't even try on the manuscript yet.
How does it go?
Try on these lyricals for size, Frankie.
Okay. La-da-da. Boy, I'm in good voice today.
Yeah. I'll see if my grandbaby piano's in tune. Perfect. Now, Frog.
This can't be love because I feel so well. No sobs, no sorrows, no sighs. This can't be love because I feel so well. But still I love to look in your, love to look in your, love to look in your eyes. Hey, Mouse, it's perfect. I'll take this song.
No, you won't.
Kitty baby, what are you doing here?
I came here to get a song composed for a Valentine for you, Frankie.
But I came here to get one for yours, Kitty.
Well, I kept quiet just as long as I could. He promised me that song you just sang, and then he said you could have it.
Well, Kitty, I didn't know.
That mouse knows. Where is he?
Please, Kitty, don't be mad. I didn't mean no harm. Honest to mice, I didn't.
Where's that music?
Hey, you mean this song?
Yes, I'll fix it.
Hey, Kitty, you're tearing up the Mouse's song.
Hey, Kitty, me new hit song.
You're lucky I'm not tearing you up, Mouse. Come on, Frog. We're leaving.
We are?
Now, round, Green Frog.
Oh, Kitty, I'm sorry. This means neither one of us will get a musical Valentine.
What do I care about musical Valentines when I have you, Frog?
Hey, do you mean it, Kitty?
Of course. We can make beautiful music together.
Oh, gee willikers, Kitty. I'm glad you're not mad.
Round, sit here with me, Frankie, and we'll forget about everyone else.
Just the two of us, all alone.
I beg your pardon?
Timothy Turtle.
Kind of turtles live anywhere without being used for a sight?
And just when we wanted to be alone.
Well, don't you two know that you can never be alone as long as you're sweethearts?
How's that, Tim?
No matter where you two go, Cupid will always be along.
Love comes to Wormwood Forest in time for St. Valentine's Day, but we'll bet there'll be more comic Valentines than any other kind for our friends down in Wormwood Forest.
Hey, that's all today. We're so glad that you could stay. There's always lots of fun down in Wormwood Forest.
Oh, don't tug my foot, Chucky.
And what is it, sweetie Sue?
Next week, Barbecue Pig is going to the ballet with Swindlecue Fox.
My, how nice.
Will you take me to the ballet?
Yes, if you really want to go, but it's for me. I just don't care for the ballet.
You don't?
No. I think it's ridiculous. Ha! A fish toe dancing. Ha!
What's ridiculous about a fish toe dancing?
Fish don't have any toes.
Remember next Saturday, listen to our animal play. There's always lots of fun down in Wormwood Forest.
Wormwood Forest, written by Tom Titchener, has come to you from WSM in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. During its run, the program received two...
This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
Excuse me, didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah. During its run, the program received 2 awards from Billboard magazine for locally produced radio programs for children. Mr. Titchener was also proud of a letter from a PTA group that said, well, all right. This a letter from a PTA group that said, quote, "We are recommending your program to adults and children alike as one of the outstanding programs for education and entertainment. The 16 episodes of Wormwood Forest broadcast on NBC are in circulation and you can get them online." As an epilogue, Mr. Titchener had success on Broadway. He and his puppets appeared in the Broadway musical Carnival. 2 of the puppets made the cover of Life magazine in May 1961 with the show's star Anna Maria Alberghetti. But after New York, Mr. Titchener returned to Nashville and continued his relationship with the public library. He was 69 at the time of his passing in 1992. Now called Wishing Chair, the Nashville Public Library still continues the live events started by Mr. Titchener. So that's tonight's first 15, Wormwood Forest.
Thank you very much. That was, I'm a sucker for juvenile shows, so I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
And judging from the smiles on people's faces, I think a lot of people shared that sentiment. So I personally will look up those 16 episodes. Did anyone have any questions maybe, or no?
I have a comment.
Sure, John.
Yeah,
Um, I thought the audio quality was absolutely excellent. So
Yeah.
much better than we've heard in many of the previous programs, but it was really outstanding.
Well, I'm going to say, John, I will thank John Habit because I've been sending John a preview of the shows. He's been cleaning them up, and so that I'm glad that it came across well.
yeah,
Thank you, John Habit.
I thought the same thing, John. So that's wonderful. Anybody else?
Listen, this is Derek. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I guess that girl skunk couldn't lend out the $3. I guess you could say that skunk didn't have a cent.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
did anyone else notice Gerald? What was he? The seller of the Valentines, Gerald Grasshopper, I guess it was. I thought that he could have filled in for Clarence Hartzell as Uncle Fletcher. He sounded very much to me like Uncle Fletcher.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have been trying to figure out who that was since I first listened, because he sounds like so many people.
Go ahead, Joni. What did you want to say?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I don't know that we ever had it on probably at that time it would have been WEAF or WNBC in New York, because Bob Smith started Howdy Doody on the radio, and I noticed that Wormwood Forest was in many ways very similar. But I also want to say that the quality was super good, Frank and John.
Hear,
So
hear.
thank you. I really enjoyed that. I'm a kid at heart, though. So
Thank you,
so
Joni.
thanks again.
And I notice Stone Wallace has joined us. Welcome. We're delighted to have you here. We're looking forward to your presentation. But first, we have our quiz, which Sally Stevens manages. So I'll give her co-hosting privileges. And then you'll be up next, Mr. Wallace. So let me just find, here she is. Make co-host. All right, you have the keys to the kingdom, Sally. Take it away.
Ooh, I feel very special.
Oh, you
All
are.
right, everyone. This is just because it's summer doesn't mean we aren't doing remediation and summer school. You're all in summer school and you're all in my class. So it's time for you to get your pens and papers out, because this is a pop quiz for the evening, a not too tough, supposedly, summer quiz. We'll see what Frank has in store for us today, but I hope you have your pens and papers out. Oh, I see Wendy's ready. Excellent. Oh, very nice. Joni's ready. Oh, very good. Dennis has his materials. John, do you think that's really going to get all your answers down on a Post-it note? Do you? Okay, we'll just have to see. That might be a point deduction for small.
I write very small.
But then I will want to see all of your answers at the end of this quiz.
Get in your car and start driving to North Carolina.
I'll be right there. All right. So if everyone is prepared, that was your time to get your materials. And as I say every month, you will be able to answer the questions on the computer. I will have that run, but I will be reading them. And I will read them slower. So you may move ahead of me on the computer if you wish to do so. All right, everyone. It's been a little while. It's summertime. Here we go. Poll launching now. Thumbs up that you can see the poll. Thank you so much. Excellent. All right. Number 1, Tonto's horse, Scout, that traveled far and wide with the Lone Ranger's horse, Silver. But Tonto had a horse before Scout. What was that horse's name? A. Paint horse. B. Wampum. C. White fella. D. Good friend. Tonto's horse, Scout, traveled far and wide with the Lone Ranger's horse, Silver. But Tonto had a horse before Scout. What was that horse's name? Number 2. Speaking of horses, the Cisco Kid's compadre, Pancho, rode a horse with what name? A. Barney. B. Google. C. Loco. D. Diablo. The Cisco Kid's compadre Pancho rode a horse with what name? Number 3. Someone is not prepared in my household. Hold, please. Number 3. Many shows had protagonists that helped others with problems for no fee. Which one was the friend of the friendless? A. The Saint. B. Dan Holiday. C. Boston Blackie. D. The Cisco Kid. Many shows had protagonists that helped others with problems for no fee. Which one was the friend of the friendless? Number 4. Basil Rathbone spent years on radio and in the movies playing Sherlock Holmes. But Rathbone wasn't born in England. Where was he born? A. Wales. B. South Africa. C. Australia. D. India. Basil Rathbone spent years on radio and in the movies playing Sherlock Holmes, but he wasn't born in England. Where was he born? Number 5. Speaking of birthplaces, this actor was born in Tasmania. He made many appearances on the Lux Radio Theater and had a series called Freedom USA, in which he played a U.S. Senator. Who was he? A. Tyrone Power. B. Errol Flynn. C. Edward Arnold. D. William Demarest. This actor was born in Tasmania. He made many appearances on the Lux Radio Theater and had a series called Freedom USA, in which he played a U.S. Senator. Who was he? Number 6. On Richard Diamond, the same actor played Sergeant Otis and Helen's servant. What was the actor's name? A. George Holmeyer. B. Harry Bartell. C. James Nussert. D. Charles Calvert. On Richard Diamond, the same actor played Sergeant Otis and Helen's servant. What was the actor's name? Frank gets -2 points for difficult names on a cold read already. Number 7. I didn't mention Helen's servant's name because that's the next question. What was his given name? A. Arthur. B. Francis. C. Chalmers. D. Lionel. What is the name of Helen's servant from Richard Diamond? Number 8. Throckmorton P. Gildersleeve had many girlfriends over the years. Which of the following actresses did not play one? A. Shirley Mitchell. B. Una Merkel. C. Martha Scott. D. Frances Robinson. Gildersleeve had many girlfriends over the years. Which actress did not play one? Your 2 points are restored for not including the dreaded Phoebe. Number 9. While on the subject of Gildersleeve, what did the initial P stand for? A. Popeye. B. Philharmonic. C. Psychosis. D. I know this word, but now I can't say it properly. Porcine, porcine, porky.
Or sign.
What did his initial P stand for? Have fun with that one. Number 10. Doc Gamble on Fibber McGee and Molly had a given name. What was it? A. Floyd. B. Richard. C. George. D. Leroy. What is the given name of Doc Gamble on Fibber McGee and Molly? Frank, you got me. And you know how much I dislike Gildersleeve, so that one was good. Okay, I will leave the poll running in the background. So if you couldn't understand me, which I don't know why you wouldn't have been able to, it's not like I was trying not to snort or anything. Get it? Snort? Okay. I will let it go, let it keep running during our presentation, and then following our presentation, I will give you a warning, and then I will close it so that we can go over the answers.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sally. And Edgar, very handsome tie. Thank you for sharing.
Let me see.
You're welcome. Oh, wait, I have to show it again to Dennis.
Thank you, Edgar.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you. And now we get to the meat of the program, and I will turn it over to Frank to introduce our speaker.
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
Our speaker tonight is Stone Wallace. He's joining us from his hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba Province, Canada. And actually, I said it before, I'm glad there are no longer long-distance phone charges because our phone conversations would have cost us a fortune. Stone Wallace has been a professional writer for over 40 years. He's published 20 books, both novels and nonfiction. He's written short stories, scripts, screenplays. He's in the process of writing novel number 21. I first encountered Stone in the articles he writes for Nostalgia Digest. Additionally, he's contributed articles for publications Film Facts, Videoscope, and Movie Marketplace. He is also a regular contributor to the Jolson Journal. Stone has conducted on-air celebrity interviews with such legendary performers as Anthony Quinn, Colleen Gray, Mickey Knox, Marcia Dean, Lloyd Nolan, Robert Stack, and 50s horror director Herbert Strock. Stone attended Red River College in Winnipeg, the National Institute of Broadcasting, and Robertson Broadcast Academy. He was the director and principal instructor of the Media Actors Workshop. He was president of the Stone Wallace National Casting Network. He was a co-developer and instructor for executive seminars and professional presentation. Stone is an actor. He's appeared in numerous television commercials and corporate videos. He's appeared on film and in various stage performances. The subject tonight, the movie Tough Guys, has long held Stone's interest. He has written about them for Nostalgia Digest, in addition to others that I've seen, such as Basil Rathbone, Claude Rains, Charles Lawton, and Paul Muni. His book, George Raft, The Man Who Would Be Bogart, has been recognized as the best and most comprehensive examination of the actor's life and career. So with that background, I give you Stone Wallace and his encyclopedic knowledge of the movie Tough Guys.
How is that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm still getting used to the technical side here from a guy who used to write his books on a manual typewriter. So I'm trying to come in sync with today's technologies. But thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. So the volume is coming across clear?
Very clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. I just don't want to start talking and not have anybody hear me. Well, thank you again, Frank, for that introduction. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you in our conversations, talking about various film and radio subjects. My talk this evening will be about one of my passions, which is the movie Tough Guys. And I suppose the best way to start this would be how I became interested, and a little bit of bio here, I suppose. And it's very strange, actually, because I was about 6 years old, and I was at my Aunt Mary's house. She had a book from the library on the Roaring Twenties. And I was sitting there just flipping through the pages, not thinking about much. And all of a sudden I came across a picture, and I hate to say this, of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And it caught my interest immediately. I thought, this is something I've never seen before. And at my 6 years of age, I began flipping through the pages, and all of a sudden I'm looking at these characters like Al Capone, Machine Gun Jack McGurn, Tony Accardo, Paul Ricca. I don't know what happened at that point. All of a sudden, I found myself just captivated. I don't know why. Did he have a past life connection? No idea. But from that moment on, I became very much intrigued and fascinated, not just by the gangsters of the time, but the era itself, which I began to research quite incessantly, to the point where when I was in grade 3, and I told you this story, Frank, I was in grade 3, and our teacher asked us to write a short biography of a famous person. And I did Al Capone. In fact, I even cut a picture out of a magazine I had, and I pasted that in my report there. And my teacher must have thought it was quite strange. I don't know if she ever talked to my parents about that during parent-teacher night, but that's what I did. And it just basically grew from there to the point where here I am all these years later, and I'm still fascinated, absorbed by that era, the criminals of the era, and the psychology of the criminals of the era, the businesses and all that, to the point where when I was 12 years old, my Uncle Harry passed away in Phoenix. Now, he and my Aunt Grace lived in Chicago during the 1920s, and I just peppered my Aunt Grace with stories. What was it like in the 20s? Tell me about that era. Pardon me. She told me stories about how they used to do flower shopping at Dean O'Banion's flower shop. And of course, he was a Capone rival who was murdered by Capone gunmen Scalise and Anselmi. She also told me the story about when she was walking by the garage on North Clark Street shortly after the St. Valentine's Massacre occurred. And another story she had mentioned to me about when my uncle was leaving his job at the telephone company in Chicago and actually witnessed a gangland murder. So this stuff, of course, fascinated me. And then a few years later, I spent the summer in Chicago with my other uncle, and I pestered him ad nauseum to take me to the locations that still existed in Chicago, where a lot of these criminal activities had taken place, including the Biograph Theater, where Dillinger was supposedly shot. That's a whole different story. Capone's grave, and where the St. Valentine's Day Massacre took place on North Clark Street, which was no longer there, but the area itself. So anyway, that was my beginning. And like I say, it grew and grew and grew to the point where I became fascinated with the whole era. And naturally, as a result of that, I became very interested in gangster movies. And the first actor that I ever became very intrigued by was Humphrey Bogart. In fact, I don't have Bogart on this shirt, but you'll see I've got Robinson, Cagney, and George Raft on my shirt right now. And I do have a poster of Bogart behind me. I saw Bogart. They didn't show a lot of classic movies up here in Winnipeg of that type during my earlier years. Now, of course, it's a whole different situation. We only have 3 channels in Canada, at least in Winnipeg. And I saw the movie High Sierra, which, of course, featured Bogart in a kind of a criminal, but a criminal with a heart of gold, or softer heart kind of performance as Roy Earl. And I watched that film, and immediately I just became intrigued with Bogart, the characterization and everything, and began a study of him, trying to find out whatever I could about his career, his life. And his life was really quite interesting, and his career was actually even more interesting. There were 2 actors who I think had probably the most interesting careers, would be Bogart and George Raft, because there's a lot of things that happened. In fact, they're very interconnected as well. Pardon me. Shortly after that, I was, like I mentioned, I was in Chicago in the summer of 1972, and watching films that we never got here in Winnipeg. And we were watching a film called Each Dawn I Die. Cagney and Raft. Bang, right away. Another complete obsession with these wonderful actors, their tough guy performances, and I began immediately researching them, which of course eventually led to my writing the George Raft biography. Then, of course, there was Eddie Robinson, John Garfield. Then I began a correspondence with Lloyd Nolan that resulted in my actually having a chance to meet with him when I was in California, in Brentwood, on my way to Mexico post high school graduation. And it just was one of those situations where I was able to talk with people that I grew up with and enjoyed their work. And if not with them directly, I've been very fortunate to talk to their children. For instance, Edward G. Robinson's granddaughter, Francesca, Humphrey Bogart's son, Stephen Bogart, and John Garfield's daughter, Julie. So it's been quite a treat along the way there to have the opportunity to meet these people and talk about their fathers and their careers. Most of which are, well, I should say most of which, but there are those that are very sad, such as John Garfield's career and what happened to his life as a result of the witch hunts back in the late 1940s into the 50s, and he was blacklisted. His career never got back on track afterwards. He tried, but he was pretty much persona non grata even overseas in a film that he was supposed to do that they backed away from because of his reputation. But pardon me, I'll start with Bogart. If you're interested, Bogart, he was raised in unlike the other guys like Cagney and Raft and Garfield, he was raised in pretty nice financial situations. His father was a physician. His mother was a famous illustrator, and he was actually known as the Maud Humphrey baby. She used his image as a baby on baby food food containers, I believe. So Bogart was in a lap of luxury. However, his parents outside, well, his father, he had a very strong affection for. His mother was a very cold woman. And he was raised, he and his two sisters are basically raised by very cold governesses who were very quick to punish them for the slightest transgression, talking corporal punishment. So it was a tough upbringing for him in that sense. Both of his sisters, unfortunately, fell victim to, well, one was from mental illness, what probably started from her upbringing, and the other sister became an alcoholic during the 20s and, fell victim to that era. Bogart himself was intelligent, but he didn't really like to follow restrictions. So he was not a great student in school. He went to Andover Academy, but he couldn't put up with the rules and that and dropped out. The day he walked out, one of his friends said, well, he's destroyed his life, which was kind of interesting considering what became of Bogart. Bogart went to the Navy, came out, was looking for a job, got involved in theater, and from there, found he enjoyed it. Even though the first time he walked on stage, he could not remember his lines. He almost urinated himself, he said, because, it was a whole new experience for him. But he went on to do a number of plays, usually playing the juvenile. The old saying that he was famous for saying tennis anyone was kind of his big line. Whether or not that's actually true has always been open to debate. I think they actually said that line. He went to Hollywood back in the early 30s and tried to make a few films there. Never made a mark. Unfortunately, he showed presence, but even though he signed a $750 contract with Fox Studios, his career never really went too far, and they eventually dropped him even after playing his first gangster in a film called Three on a Match, which he does a very good performance, actually, alongside Bette Davis and Anne Dvorak. He went back to New York, supported himself by playing chess. He was an expert chess player, and so he would challenge players to pay him to play, and he usually won. Then along came a play called The Petrified Forest. And this was a film that a play that they had Bogart in mind based on his background on stage to play the Bose Herlinger part, the football player. When he went on stage to audition, Leslie Howard was in the audience, and he said, his voice and mine are enemies. I want him to play Mantee, since most of the dialogue would take place between the two of them in the Desert Cafe. So thanks to Leslie Howard, Bogart was given the role on the stage and became a sensation. In fact, he based his characterization on John Dillinger, who was big in the news at that time, and wouldn't even shave during his performances, which was interesting because a lot of people would buy extra or pay extra for front row tickets because they wanted to see the stubble on Bogart's face, which I suppose at that time wasn't something you saw in actors. So the play was a huge success. Warner Brothers saw it and they wanted to purchase the rights. However, there was a stipulation. They didn't want Bogart to play Duke Mantee because they had Edward G. Robinson under a high-priced contract. Robinson's career hadn't been faring too well at that point, so they wanted naturally to put their contract player in. Fortunately, Leslie Howard stepped in. He said, no, he says, no Bogart, no movie. He actually was a producer and owned some of the rights to it, so he did have a say there. So thanks to Leslie Howard, Bogart got his role in the film version and scored a sensation. But here's where the interesting thing comes in. And I don't want to go all over the place with this, but it does all balance together. Bogart was a huge hit. Warner Brothers signed him to a contract. However, Warner Brothers didn't know what to do with him. Even though he scored a huge hit on Broadway, a huge hit in the movie, he basically stole the film. Without him, that would be a deadly dull movie. But whereas Cagney was an immediate superstar after starring in The Public Enemy, which was based on an unpublished novel, Edward G. Robinson became a huge star after playing in Little Caesar. Both these actors, their names came above the title after these films. Bogart basically became a utility player. He was in support of the other big stars at Warner Brothers, like Pat O'Brien, Robinson, Cagney, starring occasionally in a B film and playing a supporting part in a major motion picture like Dark Victory or Black Legion. So he was kind of like, what would you the word you'd say? He just kind of floating along there, basically. He was given another major hit on loan out to Samuel Goldwyn to play Babyface Martin in the great movie Dead End, which the role had been played by Joseph Downing on the Broadway stage. The mannerisms which Bogart admitted he adopted for the movie. Again, great success. That was a film, by the way, that George Raft was initially was asked to play, but Raft, we'll talk about him later as well. He didn't want to keep playing hoodlums who died at the end of his movies. Bogart, however, wasn't so choosy. He thought it was a Broadway hit. He wanted another one, so he took the role. Sensation, went back to Warner's. Guess what? He's back into the same old grinder, playing the utility heavy in movies like King of the Underworld, You Can't Get Away with Murder, Rocket Busters. So he was, still waiting for his big break, which didn't seem to be coming. He did support for Cagney and Angels with Dirty Faces, even the crazy Western, The Oklahoma Kid, The Roaring Twenties. With Robinson, he co-starred as the villain, as he usually did, in films like Bullets or Ballots, Kid Galahad, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse, Brother Orchid. And then what happened was George Raft came onto the scene. George Raft was picked up by Warner Brothers, and they put him into a film with Cagney, like I mentioned, Each Dawn I Die, which is a film that I got familiar with these guys with. Then there was a movie called Invisible Stripes. And this is a film that really irked Bogart because cast above him was a young actor named William Holden. Now, William Holden had only made one film previously to this, which is Golden Boy. He was under contract to both Columbia Pictures and Paramount, and he was given third billing. Bogart was fourth billing. Bogart naturally felt, wait a second here, I've been at the studio forever. I've done all this work for them. Here's William Holden, this kid, 20 years old, who comes along as getting higher billing than I am. And Bogart, naturally felt the resentment towards him, which apparently carried on through the film they made back in the 1950s called Sabrina. So I've heard conflicting stories that they actually made amends at that point, but then I heard Holden once said that Bogart was an actor of consummate talent and an ego to match. And this was later on in his life, so perhaps there was some truth. There was a resentment still going on then. But back to George Raft, as far as Bogart's career is concerned, Raft, after he signed with Warner Brothers, did Invisible Stripes, Each Dawn I Die. They did a film together as truck driving brothers called They Drive by Night, excellent film. And then along came High Sierra. Well, first of all, Paul Muni was asked to play Roy Earl. Muni, in the meantime, was looking forward to playing a biography of Beethoven, which Warner had promised him. But since the world was at the brink of war, the story whether it's true or not, I don't know. is that Jack Warner said to Paul Muni, the audience wants escapism now. They don't want to watch a movie about a blind composer, which you have to love, Jack Warner's intelligence there. Muni apparently was so incensed at having his promise broken that he literally tore up his $10,000 a week contract, walked off the lot, and only made a handful of films afterwards, basically focusing on the stage then. George Raft was next in line, and again, as we know, and George Raft did not want to continue playing hoodlums who, died at the end and didn't get the girl. So Bogart pretty much championed for the role, and he did get it, and that was the first step in his career ascension. The next film, of course, was The Maltese Falcon. Again, Raft was approached. He didn't want to work with an untried director. The film had been filmed before, and unsuccessfully twice before. On top of that, the story that Raft tells was his agent had mentioned to him that the actress is not really very attractive. He's talking about Mary Astor. And of course, her hairstyle in that film is not really something to knock out about. But that aside, Raft used all those elements to say, no, I'm going to turn this film down as well. So he did. And who stepped into the part? Of course, Bogart. Then came Casablanca. Now, the story has always been that Raft turned it down. And even towards the end of his life, in an interview Raft gave, he said, I've had many regrets in my career, and one of the biggest regrets I ever had was handing the role of Rick to Bogart in Casablanca. Well, that's not true. The fact of the matter is Raft had been in numerous suspensions, as he had been at Paramount. I think Raft held a number of suspensions at Paramount. So he was actually starting to realize that Bogart was starting to rise in his career, and I'm assuming he was beginning to fear competition, because he was the biggest star on the lot for a while there. As John Huston said, the director, he said everything at that time was intended for Raft. He turned down parts in films like The Seawolf, All Through the Night, The Big Shot, other films like that, which, of course, overall Bogart took and made into, successes given all. So Raft wanted to do Casablanca. And even Jack Warner said, well, this film, instead of saying Raft exclusively, he said this project would be a good film for either Raft or Bogart. The problem is that Hal Wallace, the producer, and Michael Curtiz wanted nothing to do with Raft. They wanted Bogart. So Bogart got the parts. Raft went on to do another film, one more film for the studio called Background to Danger, which was a pretty good film. It's kind of like a Casablanca wannabe. It's exciting in concept, but didn't do nowhere near the business. So right after that film, Raft left the studio to go independent, and Bogart became the king of the lot and made a number of great films during the war, such as Action in the North Atlantic, Passage to Marseille, Sahara, and of course he went and made To Have and Have Not, that based on the Hemingway novel, which it really isn't, and met his wife Lauren Bacall, and his career went up from there, making films such as The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The African Queen, a lot of films, of course, with John Huston. One thing about Bogart, I have to say that I find interesting, is he received an Academy Award after, receiving a nomination for Casablanca for The African Queen. And although he won the award, and it's a good performance, it's fun, he was completely overlooked for The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which to me is a much more complex performance. He plays a pretty decent man who, descends into paranoia and insanity, and not even a nomination for that role. So I feel sometimes that The African Queen was more of a consolation prize. But he continued making pretty good films during the 50s. He did the Caine Mutiny, another film which he showed his acting chops, and kind of an underlooked movie he made called In a Lonely Place, where he plays a psychotic, hot-tempered screenwriter. Another good film. Unfortunately, as we know, Bogart smoked incessantly, drank incessantly. He did have although he was known as a very gentle man in many ways, like John Huston said, the problem with Bogart is when Bogart has a few drinks under his belt, he thinks he's Humphrey Bogart, which of course is the case, because he would, he wasn't a fighter, but he would like to needle people to the point where they would, come to him and he would just kind of back away at that point. It's a game he played, I think. Dangerous game, obviously, but he did play that. Bogart had two children. He had his son, Stephen, named after the character he played in To Have and Have Not, and his daughter Leslie, who was named after his good friend Leslie Howard, who really jump-started Bogart's early career. And of course, Bogart unfortunately ended up dying of esophageal cancer, and became post-death one of the biggest stars in the world, and unfortunately never, at 57 years of age, very young, never lived to see the legend that he became. So that was the story of Humphrey Bogart, and like I say, he was one of my first. It still is one of my screen idols. I very rarely miss a Bogart performance in anything, but yeah, he was an original, definitely, in many ways, as an actor and as a human being. One story about Bogart I should mention, though, is when he was going through his pretty heavy drinking stage, he was at a party and he met a Marine who wanted to challenge Bogart to see how tough he was. Well, Bogart was obviously well into his cups at that point, and he said, "Okay, I'll challenge you, all right." He picked up a glass tumbler, bit it, and began chewing the glass. Of course, making a heck of a mess. I mean, but he at that point the Marine said, "Okay, you're a tough guy," which he was. Crazy, but a tough guy. The next actor, I guess, to talk about would be Jimmy Cagney. Again, another actor who I discovered in Chicago, and I'd seen him before, but I discovered him in Chicago in 1972, the summer, watching him in Each Dawn I Die with Raft. Unlike Bogart's upbringing, which was privileged, but financially privileged, but not very, very warm, Cagney grew up in a house that was poor, but he had a lot of love. His mother raised him and his brothers to be good citizens, to work hard and develop their own careers, and she supported them in everything they could do. Unfortunately, Jimmy's father was a heavy drinker, and he fell victim to the Spanish flu in 1918, possibly contributing to it by his heavy drinking. He owned a saloon, and it was said that he actually drank more than his customers. So Cagney, had been working from a young age, doing a variety of jobs, as did his other brothers. He had an older brother named Harry, who became a doctor, a younger brother named Ed, who also became a doctor, and a brother named Bill, who became his manager when Cagney began to make it big in the movies. Cagney attended Columbia University briefly, but family finances were such that he had to drop out and look for a job, and he eventually found his way into show business. Ironically, his first job on stage was as a chorus girl in a production called Every Sailor. It was tough for him during those years. He was trying to struggle. He was, doing the best he could to make a living at it. He fell in love with a girl named Willie, and he married her, Frances Vernon, married her, and they struggled along during the 1920s pretty much, highs and lows. But then 1929, he made a play. He was in a play with Joan Blondell called Penny Arcade. The play was a flop, but L. Jolson saw it, and he bought the rights to it, which he sold to Warner Brothers on the provision that Cagney and Joan Blondell repeat their stage performances. That was the start. He made that film, and then he did a gangster picture called Doorway to Hell, and did a small part with George Arliss in a film called The Millionaire. And then a movie came along called The Public Enemy. And in this film, Jimmy Cagney was going to be cast as the pal of actor Edward Woods, who was engaged to Luella Parsons' daughter. Now, Edward Woods had a moderate career, but he was better known than Jimmy was. Jimmy was still kind of struggling along there. So they made the film, they began filming. The director, William Wellman, watched the rushes and said, whoa, hold it. We got the wrong guy here. I mean, Jimmy Cagney had that touch of the gutter where Edward Woods was an educated, clean cut, not the kind of character that Tom Powers would be in that film. So Jimmy Cagney took over. Edward Woods was kind of like surprised, but his career never went further after that to speak of. Jimmy was a hit, signed to a contract with Warner Brothers, and that began his career, making a number of films. But Jimmy was, as Jack Warner referred to him, the professional gangster, not gangster, but that too, actually. He was always wanting more money for the roles he did, because he realized he wasn't a selfish person. He was very generous, actually. But he realized that the studio was making millions off his movies. He was making thousands. He wanted to be better compensated, because he saw other actors whose films were not doing as well as his, were making almost triple the money he did. So Jimmy staged his first walkout at Warner Brothers. He worked out another deal where he's getting, more money for his work. He made a lot of great films during that period, such as G-Men, where they put him on the right side of the law, the public enemy to an FBI agent. He even did Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Frisco Kid, Ceiling Zero. But again, he wanted more money, and he was looking for a way to break his contract. And he managed to do so when he noticed that a theater was showing the film Ceiling Zero, and the theater owner had put Pat O'Brien's name above Jimmy's on the marquee, which was a breach of contract. So once again, Jimmy walked, and he went to a company called Grand National, where he made a couple of pretty okay movies, but not of the quality Warner's was making, called Great Guy and Something to Think About. Warner's wanted him back desperately, so they offered him a very generous contract that paid him a good percentage of the profits as well. He came back and made a comedy with O'Brien called Boy Meets Girl, and then came the movie that I think really cemented him as a tough guy actor, Angels with 30 Faces, which he co-starred with Bogart and Pat O'Brien. He played the gangster, Pat O'Brien played the priest. What is interesting about the movies they made together is that Pat O'Brien always played the sober, quiet, more, what's the word? Just say the more quiet, the more reserved person overall, where Cagney was like dynamite going off in all places. Yet in real life, it was quite opposite. Pat O'Brien was very gregarious. He was a talkative jokester and all that, where Jimmy was very introspective and a very quiet man, to the point where O'Brien referred to him as the faraway fella because he always seemed to be off in his own world. So it was interesting to see how they played roles that were pretty much different from their real life characters. Angels with 30 Faces earned Cagney his first Academy Award nomination that he lost to Spencer Tracy, who won his second Oscar after winning one for Captain's Courageous for playing Father Flanagan in Boys Town. Now, here's the thing. He gives a good performance, but Cagney is dynamic in Angels. And I think the reason that Cagney never got the award, he won the New York Critics Award, but he lost the Oscar to Tracy, because I think the Academy was nervous about giving the award to an actor playing a hoodlum than giving it to a guy who played a priest, and one who was actually still alive, who actually was a real life character, the founder of Boys Town. So Cagney lost that award, but nevertheless, he was enjoying a very strong, steady career and did a lot of great films during that period. Probably his best period in movies was from 1938 to 1942. And of course, that year was capped off with Yankee Doodle Dandy, when he finally did win his Oscar, well-deserved. The whole show is Jimmy Cagney. It's a film that still I can watch today, and it still sends shivers through me after hundreds of viewings of it, or dozens of it. But after that film, he was wanting to go off on his own. He was getting impatient working with Warner Brothers. He felt that they might be cheating him on the profits a bit. He wanted to go independent. So together with his brother Bill, they formed Cagney Productions. This was after Jimmy did his bit for the war, touring camps and putting on shows, etc., selling war bonds. So Jimmy and Bill started their company. It was a family affair. They had their sister Jean, who was born in 1919, the baby of the family, appearing in some of the films, and Ed and Harry were both involved with the productions. The problem is Jimmy wanted to veer too far from the roles audiences expected of him and enjoyed him in. So he made a film called Johnny Come Lately. Then he made one called Blood on the Sun, which he tried to bring back kind of his tough guy image, but it wasn't quite there. And then his big disappointment was when he bought the rights to the William Saroyan play, The Time of Your Life, which was a huge hit on Broadway, but the movie flopped. In fact, they lost a lot of money on that film, to the point where Jimmy had to go back to Warner Brothers, sign a deal with them to help pay off the money that Cagney Productions lost on The Time of Your Life. And what happens? He goes back to Warner's. First film he gets, White Heat, where he plays the most vicious gangster he had played up to that point, a role he did not want to return to, but the deal was just too good. He played Cody Jarrett, a psychotic killer. He said he actually was involved in the setting up of the film by saying, The film is going to be based a bit on the legend of Ma Barker, but he says, I would like to play Cody as a nut, as a total crazy guy, which is why if you see the film, you'll see him go into these paroxysms when he gets these splitting headaches and completely nuts. And a film that Virginia Mayo said he should have gotten an Academy Award nomination for, but she said gangster actors or actors playing gangster roles just weren't considered in that category at that time. So Jimmy did that film, made a great comeback. Then he made another film, another crime picture called Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, based on the Horace McCoy novel. And again, he played another crazy gangster type character. But again, that film was successful enough that they could finally pay off the money that they owed for the losses they had from the time of your life. But the 50s were not a good decade for Cagney overall. He did some good stuff like Mr. Roberts, which is a great performance. Love Me or Leave Me, where he played another gangster, the real life Marty the Gimp Snyder, and The Man of a Thousand Faces, where he played Lon Chaney. Although he looked nothing like Chaney, he gave a good performance. But Cagney was getting tired of the whole grind of filmmaking, and after making a film with Billy Wilder, whom he did not like, called 1, 2, 3, Cagney cashed it in, said, I'm retiring, I'm going to my farm, and I'm going to just live off the land and enjoy myself, which he did for a number of years until he came back in 1974 to receive the second American Film Institute Award after John Ford received the first one. And then he went back to retirement until his health began to decline. He suffered from diabetes, he was overweight, he had sciatica. So his doctor said, he's basically just vegetating. You've got to do something to keep him active. Because Cagney was always a very active man, but when his health began to decline, he kind of fell into a funk. So he did accept the role, although he had turned down films prior to this. He had turned down the part of what's the actor's name? Stanley Holloway played in My Fair Lady, which was one film he admitted did tempt him to come back to, but he finally decided against it. He was offered a role in The Godfather Part 2, turned it down, and other offers came too. But by this time in his career, he realized he had to do something to recharge his batteries. So he accepted the part of Waldo Reinholder in Ragtime, and did that film. Did quite well in it. And then he did a television movie, which was kind of sad. It's actually very kind of tragic to see Jimmy Cagney, a bundle of electricity and strength and everything, appear in this film called Terrible Joe Moran, where he plays a retired boxer. And he is so unwell that his voice had to be dubbed over in several spots. He spends the whole movie pretty much sitting in a wheelchair and watching old clips of films like from Winner Take All and City for Conquest. You have to wonder, here he is watching those films, and he was so active. And at this point, his health was really bad. And finally, on Easter Sunday in 1985, I believe, he passed away of a heart attack. And it was very sad because he left the world with a lot of grace. Apparently, the story goes, he got up that morning for breakfast and was getting ready for breakfast. And he spoke to his nurse, and then he gave her a wink and a smile, and he passed away. And I'm thinking, boy, is that ever Cagney? That's quite a beautiful story for him to go that way. And his wife outlived him by a number of years. And the interesting thing is, his wife was older than Jim, his wife Willie, and she was a very heavy smoker. Jim never really smoked. She did, and she outlived him by about I can't remember exactly how many years, but she did. So there you go. George Raft. Oh boy. Here's a guy who really needs to have a proper movie made about his life. Born in Hell's Kitchen, tough guy, non-educated, ran with street gangs. Again, he had a loving mother, and that kind of kept him somewhat on track, but he had no interest in school. He ran with the Goofer Gang, became friends with a lot of young guys who became famous racketeers in New York during that time. Tried a career as a boxer, didn't quite make it. Tried to be a ball player, couldn't make it, but he had the talent for dancing. And that's what he did. He worked very hard, going to Harlem, the clubs in New York, to study different types of dance techniques. He and his mother often partnered together. They won dance contests. So he was doing that, and he was working a lot of the clubs during the 1920s. He was doing the speakeasies, playing, clubs owned by guys like Oni Madden and that. And at the same time, he was also running chores for Oni Madden. He would run booze for them from one club to the other. And he always said that was the most serious crime he could be accused of, was he was a rum runner, I guess you would call him, or he'd run as a guard on these trucks. But then he got into trouble. He insulted a gangster named, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name right now. I apologize for that. Larry Fay, who was also the model for Jimmy Cagney in the movie The Roaring Twenties. He and Texas Guinan ran a nightclub, and George was supposed to go off with her to Hollywood, and he didn't want to. He had a gig that was lining up, and Larry Fay actually put a threat to him that he had to go with her. Oni Madden said, "Okay, you know what, George?" He says, "Go with her to Hollywood. Be a bodyguard, just protect her in that." So George did. He got on the train with her, went there, and she made a film called The Queen of the Nightclubs. And George played a small part in that. And now he discovered he kind of liked California. He liked the climate. He liked the chance to get into films. And so he began a career trying to, get into the show business, and did a few minor parts. Then he was finally picked up by director Roland Brown to play Spencer Tracy's bodyguard in a film called Quick Millions. And that film, was quite a success. It wasn't as popular as Little Caesar or The Public Enemy, but it was a movie that gave him a start as playing that kind of a role. Did other films during that time. Jimmy Cagney actually used George to play his dance contestant in the film Taxi, because he knew that George was the only actor in Hollywood. They knew each other back in New York. The only actor in Hollywood who could do the Peabody, which is a dance that's performed in the dance scene. A quick scene, but it's memorable. Then, of course, came Scarface. Howard Hawks actually had seen George in Quick Millions, liked his style, thought he'd be a great asset to the production because he had that look. He could flip a coin and all of that. So he put him into the film as Tony Camonte, played by Paul Muni's bodyguard. It's not a big part and doesn't have a lot of dialogue in that, but he clicked. Audiences seem to like his character. Now, again, the coin flipping has always been a matter of conjecture. Who came up with that? George himself said he did, because he knew gangsters in New York who actually would kind of flip a coin when they were kind of in a contemplative or psychotic mood. Howard Hawks said he gave George the idea to flip the coin because he felt that acting with an actor as flamboyant as Paul Muni, this would give him something to do instead of just standing there. So however it worked, that and the death scene that George Raft has in the film, when he is shot by Muni for fooling around with Muni's sister, Anne Dvorak, that gave him a pretty high showcase. Paramount Pictures hastened to put him under contract. His first starring film with them was Night After Night, where he was supposed to co-star with Texas Guinan, his old friend from the El Fay Club in New York. George said, he says, "I know an actress who'd be fabulous for this role." And he suggested his old girlfriend, Mae West, who took on the part of Maudie in the film, and of course became an instant sensation, to which George Raft later on said, "She stole everything but the cameras," which is a true story, apparently. So anyway, that made him into gave her break, and that got Raft back on into his career there. He did a lot of other films for Paramount, which wasn't really the best studio for an actor of his type. He was also known for turning down a lot of movies. The first major rejection when he was turned down the role of the gangster in the film The Story of Temple Drake, which was based on the novel Sanctuary, which was considered pretty obscene at the time. Now, even though the character Popeye was watered down for the movie, where he played basically a gangster named Trigger, the storyline still had a lot of questionable aspects to it. And George said, "If I do this film, it's going to destroy my career, and I'm just getting going with this." So he turned it down, and Jack LaRue, whose career was definitely on the rise at that point, took the part, and it didn't do too much for him. So maybe Raft was right. LaRue had a long career, but he never really became a star. And an interesting thing about Jack LaRue, and I should mention also, because I knew Jack LaRue, the story he tells is that he was actually the first choice to play the bodyguard Dino Rinaldo in Scarface. But after a few days of shooting, the director, Howard Hawks, said, no, you have too much authority. You have too much authority. It looks like you could beat the crap out of Paul Muni here. So, and then according to LaRue, he himself suggested that George Raft take the part because they were friends from New York. Interesting to think about, but you think about an actor who's hungry for his own success, turning over the reins to somebody else, kind of hard to understand, but that's what Jack's story was, and it could be. But anyway, back to George. He made a number of films for Paramount. Some of them pretty forgettable, but he did some good ones. He did The Glass Key, the first version of the Dashiell Hammett novel. He did Souls at Sea, Spawn of the North, You and Me with Sylvia Sidney, with whom he co-starred a lot. But after about 38 rejections at the studio, he decided he wanted to move on. He wanted a different approach to his career. So what they do, he went and signed with Warner Brothers, who put him into a gangster film right off the bat, Each Dawn I Die. But it was a good film, and he liked it. He got to work with Jimmy Cagney at an equal level. They were good friends, and did a couple. He did Invisible Stripes. But then he was asked to do High Sierra, which I mentioned earlier. The interesting thing about High Sierra is that it was based on a novel by crime writer W.R. Burnett, who did Little Caesar and other great crime novels. Raft turned it down because he didn't want to play a gangster who dies at the end. But at the same time, he's offered a role in a movie called The House Across the Bay with Joan Bennett at United Artists, which is really kind of a it's nowhere near the quality of High Sierra. Raft apparently begged to go on loan to do that film where he plays a character, a gangster, who dies at the end and doesn't get the girl. So here we talk about the idiosyncrasies of George Raft's thinking, that why he would turn down a quality film like High Sierra and do a pretty much forgettable film like The House Across the Bay. It kind of boggles the brain. But anyway, like I say, back at Warner Brothers, he was turning down a number of roles that Bogart took, and they became successful for him, advanced his career. But after he lost Casablanca and did Background to Danger, he decided he wants to chart his own career, and he left Warner Brothers and freelanced and did a number of noir films, such as Johnny Angel, Nocturne, Red Light, Ray Street. He was offered a chance to really redeem his career, though, when Billy Wilder approached him about playing Walter Neff in Double Indemnity. The thing is that Raft had Wilder read him the script, and towards the end, he said to Wilder, he says, okay, so when does this character open up his badge and show that he's actually an undercover police detective? At that point, Wilder says he had no concept of what the film was about, and he said, we knew we had a good movie at that point. So Raft was let go, and Fred McMurray took the part and changed his career entirely. So Raft's career continued on, but towards the end of the 40s, it was starting to decline a bit. His image was getting kind of tiring. They had a new breed of tough guy coming into movies who were kind of like more deadly and psychotic, like Richard Widmark in Kiss of Death, Neville Brand in DOA, Lawrence Tierney in a number of his films. So the the suave nightclub gangster played by Raft was becoming kind of out of date. And during the 50s, he was kind of an actor looking for a career. He wasn't doing too many good films. He went to Europe like a lot of actors during that time did. But he did have a comeback of sorts when he took on the role of a gangster in the film Rogue Cop with Robert Taylor. And he played a pretty vicious character in that one, kind of the role that he definitely would have turned down back during his Palmy days, and was trying to disassociate himself with those types of roles. His next big film, of course, came with Some Like It Hot, where he played another pretty ruthless gangster in that film, even though it's a smaller part. But that was his last major film. He did one more starring film, or a co-starring film, called Jet Across the Atlantic, and then he began doing cameos in films like Ocean's 11, The Ladies' Man, The Patsy, For Those Who Think Young. He never again really achieved major billing. And towards the end of his life, he was doing television commercials to pay the bills, and he was actually working as a entertainment director at some of the hotels in Vegas. His health was heavy smoker again. His health was declining. His last two films, ironically, were Sextet with Mae West, which, she made her first film with him, did her last film with him, a cameo performance again. And then he did a movie called The Man with Bogart's Face, which I think is really ironic given the fact that he could have been Bogart possibly had he not turned down the films he did that Bogart took. And Raft eventually passed away of emphysema and leukemia at the age of 85 in 1980. He did his last TV performance, which is on YouTube if anybody's interested. He did his last TV performance on the seniors show on the Mike Douglas program. And he was just months away from passing. And he talks about his age. He says, I'm 85 years old. I'm very happy to talk about it. I was born in 1985. Then it came out that George Raft's birth year was actually 1901, which I thought was really interesting because why would Raft fudge about his age and make himself older than he really was and admit he was born in 1895? And even Raft's script had 1895 to 1980. So I believe that he would know his age. And although the census apparently at the time claimed he was born in 1901, I don't know, Hell's Kitchen, 10 of the century census, I don't think you could really rely on that too much in that area. So anyway, that was the George Raft story. And they did make a film, of course, called The George Raft Story that Ray Danton played him in 1960, but there really wasn't a lot of truth to the story there. They glossed it over a bit. The only actual part of this that's reasonably true is when Al Capone called Raft in for a meeting after Scarface came out. And I talked to him about the film and his portrayal of Frankie Rio, which was the character that Raft's bodyguard character was based on. So I'm just going to slide down here. Oh, and actually I mentioned some of the radio performances, which I know that, which I have here, is let's talk about Raft did his first radio series was The Cases of Mr. Ace, which was based on a film he did called Mr. Ace, where he played with Sylvia Sidney. And he performed that from June to September of 1947. So it was a short-lived series. And then in June through August of 1951, he was the star of Rocky Jordan. And it was a role slightly similar to that of Rick in Casablanca, but he played a Cairo cabaret owner who was involved in intrigue. And I'm just going to, and I just, again, should mention about Cagney, some of his stuff. He reprised his role in the film Yankee Doodle Dandy on radio and The Strawberry Blonde. He also played roles in Next Time We Live and Night Must Fall. I believe he must have played the Robert Montgomery performance as the killer there. And he also did Angels with 30 Faces on the Lux Radio Theater. So a lot of the films that they did the abridged versions on Lux Radio Theater. Just give me a second here, and I should mention Bogart. Well, he did a lot of stuff. He a second here. So one here. He did guest appearances on Abbott and Costello, Jack Benny, and also played tough with Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. And on the Kraft Music Hall, which was hosted by Al Jolson, he even sings a few bars of Mammy because in the performance, he wants to audition to play Jolson in the upcoming film. He did a performance, a role in the Command Performance, which is a World War II radio show, where he gets to play with both his wife, Lauren Bacall, and Frank Sinatra. The most interesting thing I guess he probably did was on CBS Radio in the 1935 or 6, I'm not sure of the year, he actually played Shakespeare, Harry Hotspur, with Walter Houston in the title role in Henry IV. So it's interesting. I've actually heard that broadcast. He doesn't do bad, too bad for a guy with that tough guy lisp. He actually comes across pretty good. Then he did a lot of his own films. He did To Have and Have Not, Sierra Madre, African Queen, Petrified Forest, Cross the Pacific, Casablanca. So he did a number of the films he did on those versions as well. Okay. Edward G. Robinson. Well, interesting guy. A Yiddish actor who became famous for playing Italians in his gangster roles. Again, he was born in Romania. He came to America with his family. They settled in New York. His initial ambition was to be a rabbi, later a lawyer. He attended college and got the dramatic bug early. Went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. He was a top student there. Began doing a lot of his Broadway plays. One of which was the play The Racket, which he played the gangster Nick Scarcy, The Shape of Things to Come. became a huge hit in that one to the point where MGM, through Irving Thalberg, contacted Robinson and wanted to put him into a contract, which I believe was $1 million contract over several years, which a struggling stage actor would certainly want to be doing. But he turned turned the contract down because Thalberg would not allow him time to take off to go and do stage work in New York, which he still felt was his true allegiance, was to the stage. So he turned down that, went back to New York, and unfortunately he discovered his Broadway career wasn't doing very well. And he kind of reconsidered going back to films. And it was Warner Brothers who finally signed him to a contract, put him into a couple of gangster films, actually, the Widow from Chicago, and then came Little Caesar. Robinson tells the story that he was initially contacted by Hal Wallace to play Otero, a minor character, which Robinson said, no, if I play that part, it'll throw the whole film out of balance. So he always believed that Wallace had him in mind anyway for that part of Rico, which he took on and made him into a mega star. Yet here was a man who was so unlike the character he played, to the point where he could not fire a gun without having his eyes taped up, because every time he fired a pistol, toy pistol or whatever, he would blink. So they had to actually tape his eyes open when he would shoot the gun, so that he wouldn't blink and make it look as if he was familiar with the weapon. That film made him a hit. He signed a big contract with Warner Brothers and did a number of films, gangsters, and other more straight films as well. But he was always being compared to his role in Little Caesar, no matter what the role was, whether he was playing in a film like Silver Dollar or Tiger Shark. He was always being compared, his character, to that role. Robinson really said he took a lot of these parts on because he liked the money. It afforded him to build up his art collection, which became one of the biggest, I think, in North America, if not the biggest art collection. So he really spent a lot of his money on his art. And when his career began to suffer in the mid-1930s, and that's when Warner Brothers wanted to put him into the Petrified Forest, he did a film with Bogart shortly after that called Bullets or Ballots, where he played the cop and Bogart played the gangster. And that was a huge hit. So put it back on top again. And throughout the 1930s, he kept his career going, both in straight and in criminal roles. Then in 1941, he played Dr. Paul Ehrlich in Dr. Ehrlich's Magic Bullet, which was a film that he really enjoyed doing. He looked like Ehrlich. It was an amazing performance. But again, the thing about Edward G. Robinson was he never was even nominated for an Academy Award for any of the work he did. And there were so many films, and you look at he did, that he certainly deserved at least a nomination. You look at the 1940s alone, and you look at the variety of roles that he played. He went from playing Dr. Paul Ehrlich to playing a loving Norwegian father, to a brutal sea captain, to a crafty insurance investigator, to Johnny Rocco, returning to his roots in Key Largo, which is an interesting film in the sense that finally, after all the years that Bogart got killed by Robinson, in this film, he finally evened the score and took out Robinson. And even though that was a great hit for him, for Eddie, it also signaled a bad time in his life because he was accused of being, if not a communist sympathizer during the McCarthy theories, and his career all of a sudden took a big dip. And he kept working, but he was doing B, C films, not the kind of movies that he was used to making when he was under contract to Warner Brothers. And it was a very down period for him. He was going through problems in his personal life with his son, who was an alcoholic, and his wife was having serious psychological problems, which he had throughout their marriage. Finally, Cecil B. DeMille, like Robinson said, he saved my soul. He cast him as Dathan in the Ten Commandments, which is a film a lot of people say, well, he was so miscast. It's kind of like Little Caesar in Egypt, which is possibly true, but I mean, it's an amazingly entertaining performance. Eddie's granddaughter Francesca said this: the one movie of his I just don't think he fit into. But when I saw that movie at a reissue back in about 1973, every time Eddie came on the big screen, the audience applauded. So I mean, it obviously did have an impact, miscast or not. But that brought his career back into gear, and even though his marriage fell apart, and he fortunately did find a a wife who stayed with him for the rest of his life. He continued acting and throughout the 1960s, various roles, television, did commercials, played the whole thing. Did his radio show, which kind of was earlier on, back in 1937 to 1942. He played Steve Wilson, the crusading editor of the Illustrated Press, with Claire Trevor as his society editor, which kind of dealt with gangsters during that early period. But then when the war started, it turned more into more espionage type of dramas. And Eddie, of course, did Kraft Music Hall, did 2 performances with Jolson, did radio versions of The Woman in the Window, The Night Has a Thousand Eyes, and he even did the radio version of Key Largo. He played Johnny Rocco again. Eddie's last film was Soylent Green, which is a very good film and a nice send-off for him. His death scene, if anybody's familiar with that, when he goes and has himself euthanized because he realizes there's no point in going on in the future world any further, was played very poignantly because Eddie at that point knew he was dying of bladder cancer. So he gave that scene all he had because he knew it'd be the last time he would ever be acting in front of a camera. And he spent a lot of time during the filming just hanging around the set, even though he didn't have to be there, because again, he realized this was such a major part of his life and he wasn't going to be able to enjoy that much longer. So he liked to absorb it one last time. One funny story about Eddie I have to tell that his granddaughter told me is one time she was at school and she was waiting for her granddad to pick her up, because basically Eddie raised her because his son, her father, was not capable of doing so with his various addiction problems. So she was outside school with her friends and they were smoking cigarettes. And Eddie pulled up to pick her up. He jumped out of the car, came to her, and he was scolding her about what a dirty, unhealthy habit is. And all the time he's doing that, he's waving a cigar, his omnipresent cigar. So, yeah, he didn't practice what he preached, but I think he meant well. So, and that's the story of Edward G. Robinson. What do I have here? I don't know how much longer to go on this, Frank. What would you say we have here?
I had to unmute so I could answer you.
Okay.
So, I think that there probably would be some questions that members would like to ask. I think I mentioned about some of the celebrity interviews that you did, and I love the story about Anthony Quinn that you told me.
Oh yes.
If you if you'd want to start with that, and then we'll see if some other people have some questions.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to, because I know I've got some more I could talk about actor-wise and that, but I think I've got a pretty good overview of those thus far, and I'd be very happy to answer questions, definitely. Yes, Anthony Quinn. I was in Chicago, and I was doing a radio program there, a university radio program from Northwestern, and it was arranged through a friend of mine to do an interview with Anthony Quinn. And I thought, wow, I love Anthony Quinn. I'd love to do it. But I was advised prior to the interview, do not ask about his son, Christopher, because apparently Christopher, well, not apparently, it happened. He had drowned in W.C. Fields Pond, and they were neighbors. So we did the interview. We talked about his career. We talked about his relationship with his father-in-law, Cecil B. DeMille, and his career in general, and how he had to, really fight for the roles because he was being constantly typecast as a Mexican or an Indian. Well, he was, but he wanted to show more variety. Then at one point, and I forget, honestly, I can't remember how it came about, but Anthony himself brought up about his son. And he talked about, how sad it was and how tragic that he had lost his firstborn son. He had a lot of kids afterwards, of course. And then he said to me, he says, you know something? I never have been able to visit my son's grave in all these years. He said, I've never been able to go there. Well, I'm sitting there, my jaw's off the floor, as is my producer, thinking, wow, he brought this up. He warned me not to mention anything about this. And here Quinn himself brought it up. And yeah, it was quite a revelation there in this. He was a wonderful man. I think I told you, Frank, when we finished our interview, he says, he was living in Rhode Island then. And he says, if you're ever in Rhode Island, he says, I live on Poppasquash Road, which I love. He says, please let me know and drop in, which I never did. I've had a lot of opportunities with people that I've known that I've never taken them up on their offer because I live in Canada. You know, that's my misfortune, I guess. I've had many opportunities to meet some of these people and never did and regret it. But yeah, he was a fine gentleman. A lot of people have said he was a very hard man, but no, he was fun. And afterwards, he sent me a beautiful autograph picture which he signed. He wrote something in Mexican, and I don't know. To this day, I don't know what the heck he wrote on that, but it was some kind of a Mexican thing he wrote. So Spanish, but yeah, he was a good guy. I was lucky to meet a lot of people like him and befriend some of them as well.
But you also mentioned to me too, we talked about Colleen Gray. Apparently
Yes.
some of the actors lived in Canada. You were familiar with them and friendly with them.
In Canada?
No, she didn't? Okay. You
No,
mentioned,
no, she lived in California. No,
okay.
she was a real sweet woman. I got to know her. I interviewed her, and then she was so kind. She afterwards, and we talked. We became friends afterwards, and we kept in contact for a number of years until she passed away. But she wrote an art. I interviewed her for a magazine called Videoscope, and after the interview came out, she was kind enough to actually send an email or a letter to the publication praising my interview with her, which I thought, wow, that was really very sweet, lovely lady.
I'm still looking for a copy of The Killer so that I can, that you've recommended to me.
Oh, The Killing.
The Killing, yes.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
No.
Oh. You've got to see that movie. I'm telling you.
I will. All right, let's see if, some other people have questions, Stone.
Yep.
All right, Edgar.
Yes, and thank you for a wonderful presentation. I feel I know all of the gentlemen much better than I did before. I have a question about Edward G. Robinson. In one of his last roles was on Night Gallery in The Messiah of Mott Street. And I wondered if he or others had discussed with you how he came to be cast in that. Did he go to Rod Serling, or did Rod Serling seek him out?
Thank you, first of all, for the nice compliment there, Edgar. I appreciate that. I really don't know too much how that worked. I know Edward he probably was sought for that performance because he was doing a lot of work on television at that point. He was doing TV commercials and everything. And I think he probably was sought out to play that because he was perfect for that role. And he also did that film, The Man Who Cried Murder, for one of those ABC movies of the week. So he was doing a lot of television at that point. I think he probably was definitely sought out by Serling or whoever to play that part. But that's a really good performance he gives. Yes, I like that film. In fact, I have that DVD of the Night Gallery with that episode.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edgar.
I think there were a couple of other hands up. Wendy, do you know who they were?
I think John
Reiser seems to.
Yes.
Go ahead, John, and then I can go later.
I was really particularly interested in James Cagney, your story, and the wonderful part that he played in Mr. Roberts as the captain of that ship. But the one role that really surprised me was when he played George Cohan in the musical Yankee Doodle Dandy, which was, I think, one of my favorite pictures for Cagney. You didn't mention that, but it was so much different than any of the roles that he had ever played. But he was a skilled dancer, and it really surprised me when I saw that movie.
Well, actually,
I just wondered, do you want to comment on it?
Actually, I did mention that movie because that was the film he made before he decided to leave Warner Brothers, because he was at his height at that point. And Warner's probably would have offered him a huge career contract after that film, winning the Academy Award and everything. But he wanted to go independent, which was, I don't know, but I think it was probably a wrong move on his part. But yeah, as far as Yankee Doodle Dandy goes, again, that role was originally offered to Fred Astaire. And Fred Astaire turned it down, which Jimmy Cagney could never understand why he would have done that. And it's interesting, if you look at photographs of Cohan and Fred Astaire, they resemble each other much more than Cagney and Cohan do. But yeah, Fred Astaire turned it down. And in fact, an interesting story as well, given about films of that sort, is this one I really have a hard time figuring out. is Columbia Pictures seriously considered Cagney to play Al Jolson in the Jolson story. Just that one, I just don't think would have worked, no matter how talented he was. Larry Parks was born for that role.
I think Joni
Thank
has a
you.
question. Yeah, I think Joni has her hand up. Joni, go ahead.
I really, really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Joni.
That was so, it was fascinating. But you know, the thing that I loved was your cat in the background.
I didn't see which one, the gray one?
I don't know.
Oh, I heard them. I was hoping they get active, but yeah, okay.
I'm a cat person and I don't have a cat, but I love them and I love their vocalizations. So thank you, kitties.
I'll make sure to give them a special pet afterwards.
Good,
I was
good.
concerned they might get a little active, but they were pretty good.
Oh, I thought they were great. Thanks again.
Thank you, Joni.
Thank you.
So Wendy here.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi. You mentioned, of course, Cagney and Yankee Doodle Dandy, and I remember I was laid up for one reason or another when that was broadcast one 4th of July, and I'd only seen Caggy in the Tough Guy movies, and I thought, oh, this could be really not that great, except that it keeps getting played, and I was completely blown away by, you know, his he was a triple threat. I mean, song, dance, and really a fine actor. And I personally liked the movie 1, 2, 3. I remember seeing it when it came out in the theaters, and then even later on in reruns and such. You know, he was one wouldn't necessarily think he was much of a comedian, and yet he was a very good comic actor, in addition to his other abilities. And I think your presentation is so comprehensive. It's wonderful. I did have a question for you about George Raft.
Yeah.
I was living in Europe at the time, and I remember, and this was in the late 60s, and George Raft and his movies became persona non grata, where they, for whatever reason, and it had something to do that had happened in the States, but I think that in Europe, they stopped screening his films. Did you ever hear anything about that?
No, the only thing I know about Europe, George Raft, is he was the host of the Colony Club in London back in about 1967. And the club was very successful, but he came home for Christmas that year, and then he found out he was persona non grata. He couldn't go back to London. They said he had bad reputation, not reputation, but associations.
Mm-hmm.
The truth of this that I understand, and when I was doing my George Raft book, I was talking to a fellow who knew George very well. Is the story was that they believed other club owners blacklisted George because the Colony Club was so successful, it was taking away business from their establishments. So he was blacklisted. As far as his movies, no, I've never heard anything about that, them being blacklisted. But I will say one thing you mentioned about Cagney, about triple threat in that. Yes, Jimmy Cagney was asked towards the end of his life how he wanted to be remembered. And he says, I'd like to be remembered as a song and dance man, not as a tough guy or a movie gangster. He wants to be remembered because that was his thing. He was a self-learned dancer, and amazing scene with him. If you've ever seen the movie The Seven Little Boys, where he reprises the role of George M. Cohan, and he does that tabletop dance with Bob Hope. It's an amazing, a brief scene, but just his footwork is just incredible. So he was multi-talented. You're right, totally.
Yeah, I think there was some suggestion, and you know, I was not that old at the time, so you know, memory gets a little foggy, you know, and but I seem to remember that there was a perception that he had ties to maybe the syndicate or the, to real life gangsters.
Yeah, you're talking about George Raft.
Raft, yes.
Well, he did. I mean, there's no denying that. He was very good friends with Bugsy Siegel. And in fact, when Raft's career wasn't doing very well, and Bugsy Siegel was arrested on a bookmaking charge, Raft went to court to defend him because he was actually in the room when the police broke in. And he went to court and testified on his behalf. And there are pictures taken, I have one in my book actually, of Siegel and Raft outside the courtroom, and they have their arms around each other like good pals. So that was a friendship that they had. But like Raft always said, he said, everybody at that time in Hollywood loved Ben Siegel. He might have been a gangster, but he was hanging around with the cream of the crop. But because of the image and the fact that Raft did have that 1920s background and did know a lot of hoodlums, like he said in his book, he said, I knew them all. I knew everybody from Al Capone to Lucky Luciano to Mad Dog Hall to Legs Diamond to Dutch Schultz. So he did have that, and it did, and he used a lot of those mannerisms from those guys he knew in the 20s to play his gangster roles. But he wasn't shy about his associations with that, and that probably did have a detrimental effect on his career overall.
Well, thank you. And Bogart never being, Bogart, I believe you said, was nominated for African Queen for the Oscar, and he won it. Yes.
Yes, he won.
I think he did. Well, I think he deserved it because he was in that water with leeches and everything else. I mean, you watch that movie and I just think, ugh.
Well, I'm not saying he didn't deserve it because it was a different role for him. I'm just saying it's, to me, not fair that he wasn't nominated for playing Fred C. Dobbs in The Treasure of Sierra Madre, because that was a hell of an acting performance. When you see him start off as a pretty decent guy and then gradually shifting into paranoia, and then he's completely mad at the end. And the same thing with Captain Queeg in The K Mutiny. I mean, it's these psychologically complex roles that he did so well in, and I think that's because he has some psychological problems in his life, also sisters, and there were problems there. And also when he made the film In a Lonely Place, where he played psychotic screenwriter. So I'm saying in that aspect, yeah, he deserved, I think, awards. Whereas in African Queen, it's a fun role, and it's nice to see him got it. But I don't think it's, oh, there's my cat again. But I don't think it's anywhere near Fred C. Dobbs or Captain Queeg, his Charlie Allnut role.
Yeah, I think you're right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Stone, why don't you take a second and mention some of the projects you're working on now? I know you have some articles coming out, and you're working on your book. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, my articles, as you know, they come out in Nostalgia Digest. The winter issue had my Humphrey Bogart cover story, and I've got coming out stories on Basil Rathbone, Claude Rains, Sylvia Sidney, my first actress I've done, Lawrence Tierney, and my friend Lloyd Nolan. My book right now, I'm writing a book I've been working on for a number of years. It's called The Chicago Boys. And it deals with what happened to the Chicago mob after Capone was sent away to Alcatraz on income tax evasion, and the internal dissension that goes on in the power struggle, and the new different rackets they want to begin, including going to Hollywood and infiltrating the Hollywood unions. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm about 100,000 words in that, and I have an agent who's bugging me to finish the book, but I says, oh, it's taking a bit of time, so I'm excited about that. I hope that comes out well.
I have a question, if it's okay.
Of course.
Yes. By the way, there are a few comments on James Cagney's performance in Yankee Doodle Dandy. There is one existing film with George M. Cohan in it, and what I didn't realize till I saw it is the style of dancing that he was doing was exactly what Cohan was doing. So it was complete it was not just a random dance move. It was copying Cohen. My question comes down to Humphrey Bogart. He was allegedly a member of the first Rat Pack before Sinatra became big in it. And I'm curious if you have any information on that era.
Well, that was their get-together group at the time. Sinatra, David Niven. Oh boy, it was kind of a different group than how it became after Bogart died, and you had Dean Martin and Sammy and Peter Lawford and those guys. Back then, it was kind of a get-together. Go to Las Vegas and watch Judy Garland do a show on stage or something like that. And they actually, they started off as friends, and they began saying, you know what, let's actually make this an organization. And they actually put together a coat of arms, and they each had like I think Bogart was known as the Director of Public Relations or something like that, and they each had like a title. So they kind of made a game out of it, but they actually took it kind of seriously and put together a coat of arms. And it was Lauren Bacall actually who gave them the name the Rat Pack, which pretty much didn't fail, but kind of went a different direction when Sinatra took over after Bogart's death, and they had that new group. They preferred to be called the Clan or the Summit. They didn't like that term, the Rat Pack, even though it remains that way. And even that TV movie that was made was called the Rat Pack. So yeah, but back then it was called. Sinatra preferred the Clan to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I believe Joni Leonard has her hand up again.
Mhm.
Joni, did you have another question or observation? But you do need to unmute. There we go.
Yeah, I did. Each of them, George Raft did a lot of radio, and so did Edward G. Robinson, I believe. Is that correct?
Oh yes, definitely. Yes, I have a listing here. Robinson did. In fact, interestingly enough, Edward G. Robinson did a radio broadcast of the Maltese Falcon, where he played Sam Spade, and Laird Krieger played Casper Gutman, which I'd love to hear that one. I gotta see if I can check that one out. But he did a lot of radio also based on his film performances, like Manpower and Kid Galahad, The Sea Wolf. So he did a lot of radio as a guest appearance, and also as a actor on his own performances. Actually, there
was a suspense episode. The man who thought he was Edward G. Robinson, I think. I think that was the name of it. It was very entertaining.
I know which episode you're talking about. Yeah, I think he played a dual role in that. Did he not?
Yes.
He played himself, and he played it. Yeah, I heard that quite a long time ago. I remember that one though. Yes. That was an interesting one, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really have enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Joni. It means a lot to me. I appreciate you saying that.
Thanks again.
I have another question too, if it's okay. Some actors, when we look at these three, the main three actors you're talking about, which I guess Bogart, Cagney, and Robinson, from a radio perspective, obviously they're known most for their movie appearances. Was it a unusual thing? Was there like a big paycheck attached to get them into the radio, or was it something that was not a big deal to them? Maybe like an afternoon out kind of thing.
Well, they didn't get paid huge amounts for doing those performances. I sometimes think they also did it because, like I say, a lot of the films that they performed in, they also did abridged versions on radio, and that was like another way to interest audiences possibly going to see their films. So I think that might have been a consideration as well. And plus, it gave them exposure, gave them something to do when they're not filming. And I know George Raft, when he had a lot of downtime, when he was on suspension at Paramount and Warner Brothers, he did a lot of heavy radio, a lot of radio at that time to supplement his income because he lived a very lavish lifestyle. And when he wasn't getting salary because he was on suspension, this was a way he could supplement that.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Does anyone else have any questions? Although we've been keeping you very busy, Mr. Wallace, with
I've enjoyed it very much.
questions. It's wonderful. It's sort of like we wish we could take your brain and just pickle it.
I enjoy it. I especially enjoy talking about these things. Like I say, it's been a lifelong interest to me, and it hasn't waned at all. If anything, has increased through the years. I get to know a little bit more, and getting to know, some of the actors and their children, and even getting to know some of the underworld people and their children, which has always been kind of an interesting. I remember I had lunch with Mickey Cohen's girlfriend in Las Vegas, which I thought was quite an interesting experience. And Bugsy Siegel's daughter, Millicent, who passed away, I got to know her. And Alan Smiley's daughter, Llewellyn, who Alan Smiley was Bugsy Siegel's best friend and was sitting beside Bugsy the night that he was killed, who actually, which I found out later on, he actually came from Winnipeg and was born not too far from where I was. And I helped Llewellyn with her book, Cradle of Crime, that she wrote about her dad. So yeah, it's just something I just find a fascination with. And if anybody wants to check out my website for more information, it's www.stonewallace.net. And there's other stuff on there as well, the books I've done, and
that's great.
Since you mentioned you actually have contacted real gangsters, do you have any unique opinions regarding George Reeves' death?
Oh no. I mean, that's that's one of those mysteries. Was he murdered by Eddie Mannix? Did he commit suicide because his career wasn't going the way he hoped it would? He was typecast as Superman. It's kind of gone both ways there. Like personally, I don't think he would have killed himself. I think he was carrying on an affair with Eddie Mannix's girlfriend, and I've heard some really rough stories about him. He was kind of like a Harry Cohen type of character, so it's very possible that it could have been a homicide. Again, who knows? Hard to say, but it's possible. It's like one of the books I wrote, Dust Bowl Desperados, about the gangsters of the 1930s. I offer a lot of stuff in there about that the official facts might not be true. Did Dillinger actually get killed outside the biograph? Well, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I do know that I was researching, and there is some kind of compelling evidence that he might not have been the one who was shot outside the biograph. And then there's Ma Barker, the way she's always portrayed as a criminal mastermind. Well, Elvin Karpis says she couldn't even cook breakfast, never mind planning bacon. And what about Elvin Karpis? The claim that he was personally arrested by J. Edgar Hoover. Well, he totally disputes that story. He says when the FBI grabbed him, but Hoover was hiding around the corner, and he came out to reap the glory once he was in handcuffs. I don't know, but I mention these in my book because I think could be interesting to speculate.
John Reiser, you have another.
Yeah, well, I like comment. I was always an admirer of Edward G. Robinson, and one of the movies that you don't hear much about at all, but that he played Reuters in a dispatch from Reuters about the founding of the Reuters news service and how he established it as first off as a fancier of carrier pigeons. And he finally developed it into a worldwide news service. So that's one of Edward Robinson's very little known movies, is A Dispatch from Reuters.
It is a little known, but it's a very good movie too. In fact, he also did the radio broadcast on Lux Radio. He did that role on the radio show. It's a very good movie. I agree with you. It's not very well known, but it's a very entertaining film. But then again, basically everything Eddie did was entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, the one film where I really feel he should have definitely gotten a Best Supporting Oscar was Double Indemnity. He steals that movie. He steals that film from Fred McMurray. They're all good, but every time he comes on camera, that he owns the scene. He's amazing in that movie, and that film has got one of the most incredible final endings and final lines. And every time I see it, it sends a shiver through me. If you've seen the movie, and Fred McMurray is going to be sent over to the police for the crime. He's been wounded, and throughout the movie, Fred McMurray is lighting Edward G. Robinson's cigar. And as he's lying there waiting for the police and ambulance to come, Fred McMurray tries to light a cigarette and he can't do it. Edward G. Robinson lights it for him. And Fred McMurray says to him, because they've been as close as father and son. And at the end, Fred McMurray says, you know, the reason why you couldn't find out it was me who was responsible for this is because we were too close. You were the man across the desk. And Robinson says, closer than that, Walter. And even saying that, I get a shiver because, you know, he's got to turn him in, and it's going to probably mean the death sentence for him. But that they love each other, and but he has to pay for the crime. But it's a wonderful scene, a great ending. One of my favorite movies.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has just been a wonderful evening. I've always been a fan of the movie Tough Guys. So I was with you every step of the way tonight. And I have a feeling a lot more of us were. Thank you so much for your time and your sharing so much of what you know and some of the stories that you have heard from, you know, direct sources. I think it's really, that always makes it a much richer experience. So thank you.
Let me just end off by saying what Jimmy Cagney said at the end of his autobiography. He said, "Thank you for the use of the hall."
Very good. Well, we'll be happy to provide a hall anytime you'd like.
So much. I enjoyed it very much. It was great.
And if you want to stick around and listen to the answers to the quiz.
Oh, I played the quiz, so I'd be curious to know. I think I might have got one right, but I pretty much guessed it.
Yeah, that's about my batting average too. So
I'll be curious to see that. Sure.
That's
Well,
great.
sounds like my cue.
That's good for you, Sally. You got your cue.
Good on you. All right. So that was very engaging. Thank you very much, Mr. Wallace. That was excellent.
Thank you, Sally.
And
Thank
now
you. Thank
let's
you.
see how well everyone was studying this summer in our summer school program. Get your answer keys out. Let's see that post-it. Let's see that post-it. All right, very nice, excellent. I'm going to end the poll now. All right, here we go. A not too tough summer quiz. I don't know, Frank. This was pretty tough. You know, I never look at these ahead of time. These are always a cold read for me. And there's some pretty good ones. And bonus points for some. We'll see. Number 1, Tonto's horse, Scout, traveled far and wide with the Lone Ranger's horse, Silver, but before he had Scout, what horse did he have? Ooh, we were kind of split on the poll. Some said Paint Horse, nobody said Wampum, some said Whitefella, and some said Good Friend. Well, the correct answer is C. Whitefella was the name of Tonto's earlier horse.
Sally, is the quiz being displayed? Because I can't see it. There we go.
Can you see it now? Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Sorry, I think I hit the button twice, so it stopped immediately. All right, excellent. Thank you, everyone. There we go. All right. So that was number 1. That was C. Okay, number 2. Still speaking of horses. The Cisco Kids compadre Pancho rode a horse with what name? What? Nobody thought it was Barney or Google? I'm shocked. I'm shocked at you. Good. In school, we'd call those the throwaway answers. You immediately cross them out. Good job, everyone. Now, we were almost evenly split between Loco and Diablo. The correct answer is, we're going for a pattern. C, Loco, Loco.
Majority wrong.
Yeah, Diablo was Cisco's horse.
There you go. You totally threw Dad off. Look at that. He just couldn't control himself. All right, number 3. Many shows had protagonists that helped others with problems for no fee. Which one was the friend of the friendless? A few thought it was the Saint or the Cisco Kid. Nobody went for Dan Holliday. The majority went for Boston Blackie, but who was specifically the friend of the friendless? The majority wins. Boston Blackie. It's like we're not passing over here. Number 4. Basil Rathbone spent years on radio and in the movies playing Sherlock Holmes, but he wasn't born in England. Where was Rathbone born? The majority went for South Africa. No one went for Australia. A few went for India and a few went for Wales. The correct answer is B. Nice job, majority. South Africa. That accent, not British. All right, number 5. Speaking of birthplaces, this actor was born in Tasmania and he made many appearances on the Lux Radio Theater, had a series called Freedom USA in which he played a senator. Who was he? Ooh, we were all over the place on this one in the poll. Was it Tyrone Power, Errol Flynn, Edward Arnold, or William D? Because Frank likes to put in these names that make me nervous. So, William D. Who could it be? The correct answer is surprise! You all should have studied better. Tyrone Power. A. Tyrone Power. Now, if you had actually been studying, I hope you did, because Frank tried to trick us all. And he wanted to make sure we were all paying attention with our sergeants tonight. And now,
Ms. Stevens?
Excuse me, Mr. Abbott, you may wait a moment. Sir.
I believe that there is a factual error in this
You may wait a moment,
and
please,
the answers.
sir. You may wait a moment, please, Mr. Abbott.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. The teacher is speaking. That means you are not. Now, Frank was trying to get you to pay attention, and some of you, like Mr. Abbott, may have been paying attention, and good for you. You may get the bonus points, because if you weren't paying attention and you weren't listening to the answers and you weren't listening and paying attention, then you don't get the bonus points. So on this one, Frank is trying to ask us, on Richard Diamond, the same actor played Sergeant Otis and Helen Servant, whose name we will be thinking about later. And who was it? Did you see his name? Ha 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 ha! I hope you were paying attention and had done your studying, because Frank wanted to make sure you were all awake. And the answer is E. What? You didn't see an E? Well, that's too bad. This school isn't fair. This is preparing you for real life. Welcome to real life, children. The world, it's not fair. The answer is E. And I wrote it down somewhere. The answer is E. E. Wilms Herbert. Wilms Herbert is the answer of E. Now, you might be saying, well, there are a lot of sergeants in radio. Why, yes, there are, Mr. Abbott. There are. Would you like to tell us who perhaps Charles Calvert played on radio?
Yes, he was the sergeant on Broadway's My Beat.
Very nice.
I think Sergeant Tartaglia.
Oh, very nice. Now there's another Sergeant Otis on radio. Bonus points are still being sprinkled around, children, if you know who played the Sergeant Otis on the other show that has a Sergeant Otis. No takers? No takers
Well-
for the bonus round?
I will say that James Nusser's name is spelled incorrectly.
You don't get bonus points twice, Mr. Abbott. Only
I'm
once.
still in a negative number, but thanks.
Well, there are many Sergeant Otises. There are many sergeants. And thank you to those of you that were paying attention, and the rest of you, I hope you study better for the next quiz, because you will be expected to turn your papers in for your final grade. Number 7. Now, we didn't say Helen's servant's name because now we have to figure out who it was. The majority went with Chalmers. I think that's just a great name, so that should have been it, because that's also what I picked, even though this is one of my all-time favorite shows. I know Frank is very disappointed in me right now, but it is B, Francis. Francis is the name of Helen's butler. But I like Chalmers, so I might just call him Chalmers in my head now. It's a great name, one I can pronounce. Number 8. Oh, Throckmorton P. Gildersleeve. One of my personal least favorite characters in radio. Had many girlfriends over the years. Which of the following actresses did not play one? Ooh, this was a tough one. We were all over the place. We were pretty much equal parts between Shirley Mitchell, Martha Scott, and Frances Robinson. But the majority went for Una Merkel. Well, nice job to the 4 of you that selected D, Frances Robinson, because she did not play. Well, he got one. Good job. Let's all. Oh, someone finally got a question. Yes, we can all celebrate when we get a question right. No one's passing this class. We're all going to be in remediation again. Number 9. While we're talking about Gildersleeve, what does that P stand for? Oh, you got me, Frank. You got me on this one. Well, no one thought it was Popeye, though I certainly thought it should be Psychosis, because that laugh, oh, something about it just, every time. So I really liked Psychosis. Philharmonic was a really good one too. I thought that could be good, but there's nothing musical about that laugh, in my personal opinion. Oh, Frank, really?
Porcine?
Porcine should have been the answer, but no. The majority won. B, Philharmonic. Really? Oh, Gildersleeve. Ooh. I something. Ooh. The last question. Doc Gamble on Fibber, McGee, and Molly had a given name. What was it? You stumped many of us. Was it Floyd, Richard, Leroy? We were all kind of split across that. The majority went with George. And the majority is correct. C, George. Doc Gamble is George Gamble. Oh, you got me. Excellent quiz, Frank. Very well done. What this tells us is that this group needs to study more. And I expect you to do some reading and some studying. And I may have to assign some homework for the next quiz. Because children, these grades are not looking pretty. So and this was a not too tough summer quiz. We're going to have to do better if we want to make it to the next grade.
I have a question.
Did you raise your hand, Edgar? Did you raise your hand?
No, he didn't.
Wendy, do I need you to call out?
Yes, let me raise my hand. My little yellow hand.
Yes, thank you for raising your hand, Edgar. What is your
question? I have a question, a verification question on the question about the actor who was born in Tasmania. I believe the answer was given as Tyrone Power, and my extensive research tells me he was born in Ohio. Now, Errol Flynn was born in Australia. Could that be what came into Tasmania?
Yep.
I'd like to get a ruling from our judges.
Well, the ruling is you're correct. It was Earl Flynn, and again, I had a bad night, obviously. But yeah, because Earl Flynn, you know.
But he was born but I think he was a sailor in Tasmania, but I think he was born in Australia. Wait a minute, is Tasmania separate from Australia?
My understanding,
there's a devil there.
Yeah, I mean, he had, you know, and it's a shame. I'm sorry I got that wrong too. But I mean, he had such an interesting career before he ever went into film. You know, I mean, essentially, he worked on ships. He was, and it wasn't until he got to England finally that he got his first acting role. So, you know, mea culpa tonight. I'm going to have to check my own stuff before my September quiz, because Jack should have August. So
it was a very entertaining quiz.
It was very entertaining. And do I have to fact check you before I put?
I know.
I mean, I'll have to get the polls set up a lot earlier in the week if that's the case.
Well, I'm going to have to fact check myself, but because I know Earl Flynn because I just was listening to Secret Agent, which is I thought it was a great film and a great radio. And, you know, right before the show starts on Lux Radio, Cecil B. DeMille goes through all of the background of Earl Flynn.
Yeah, I remembered that, but
yeah.
The
thank you, Edgar.
It threw me.
And Sally couldn't cover me on that one.
What I say to all of my students whenever, because, you know, clearly for those of you who didn't know, or, you know, for purposes of the recording, I am a teacher, and whenever I make a mistake, because, you know, I'm human, I say, this just proves that Miss Stevens is not a robot.
Or a computer.
Yeah, exactly. And it usually gets about as many giggles as it got tonight. So there you go, you know.
Walter, did you guys do Great Girls whose middle name is Philharmonic? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it says on the Wikipedia page. I have interviews that Hal Perry says it was Place, because he lived in Chicago on Throckmorton Place.
Well, actually, I mean, I took it because I've actually heard it. Now, I don't have a recording of the show, but it was on one of the shows where that's what they, you know, he said in the show. So I'm certain about that.
Okay. I'm going to stick with psychosis in my head, so it's fine.
But also, I mean, it's an interesting question, because actually Wikipedia is, you kind of have to go further in fact checking, because sometimes their facts are completely whacked. So just saying.
This one I'm sure, because I heard it and I made a note of it when I heard it, and I probably have a note somewhere with the date of the show.
No problem.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I've encountered that myself.
Yeah.
I'll back up Frank on this one.
No,
Philharmonic is correct.
I do have interviews that Hal Perry said he lived in Throckmorton Place in Chicago. That's why they named the character Throckmorton P.
Ah, well, very good.
Thank you, John.
I heard once, I thought, and I could be remembering completely wrong, but I thought it was named after a street in New Jersey, Throckmorton Place or Lane or something like that. I thought I heard that in a document or an interview, but I could be completely wrong on that.
Well, that's something we can all research ad nauseum.
We're never going to be
until our next meeting, and we can then take a poll and see what people have found out.
Well, I know that there was a Throckmorton Lane in Old Bridge, New Jersey.
Yes, I thought that fairly often. And I thought that was what it was named after.
Yeah, many years ago in a galaxy far away, I was working on a project in Fort Worth, and the agency that I was working for was in the Throckmorton somebody or other building in Fort Worth. So apparently somewhere in the world, that's a rather common name.
Saying Throckmorton is common is perhaps just under having psychosis being his middle name in my brain. That's
I loved the choices on that question.
classic.
The choices of answers were really fun.
Very good.
I think.
Well done, Frank.
Well done, Frank, and doing. It's really great stuff.
Shall we cease
Thank you.
recording, Wendy?
Yeah, I think we should stop recording so